Racha, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, John, for having me.
So let's start with your gripe here. You have written to the IEC about your concerns regarding the fund. What was the response and why are you unhappy?
Well, we're exceptionally unhappy. The response was very indifferent. It didn't really answer anything that we asked in the letter. We are unhappy because the Multi-Party Democracy Fund is supposed to only really allow the IEC to manage and to administer the fund. It cannot actively solicit funding from private donors as it has purported to do. In fact, there was a meeting that was held on the 27th, I believe, of May, and the IEC came out to confess that they were actually doing this. They were doing this actively. And our gripe is that they should not do that. They should administer it like you and me. They should be able to let us, all of us, as South Africans, private donors, all of us, let us know that they are doing, that there's this fund that exists. But for them to admit that they were raising funds for parties that were actually represented in the legislature, provincial or national, we think that that is completely unconstitutional, and we are not going to have it, basically.
Yeah. And obviously unfair against new parties that are not in legislature who are not going to benefit from this.
I mean, absolutely.
Like
we believe, like us, but this is not about us wanting the fund. I mean, wanting any kind of money. We can raise money. Think about it, Shahan. You and I, taxpayers, all the political parties that are in the legislature right now receive an allowance from the national, what is it called? The National Constituency Allowance. They receive this money, you and I, my money. So whether or not I want any particular party to be funded, they are funded through you and I, taxpayers' money. They can also raise their own funding. So they can go out to donors and raise their own funding. Thirdly, they must also have funding raised by the IEC. We think that that is completely uncalled for, and it shouldn't be, and the IEC should remain impartial. If the IEC is responsible for raising funds for political parties, we think that that is completely unjust, and we think that that is completely outside of their mandate and outside of what the Political Party Funding Act allows them to do.
So what's your next move?
Our next move is to find out what our options are from a legal perspective. We will challenge this, definitely. We will not leave it unchallenged. And also, South Africans need to remember that if there aren't any voices that oppose what is happening in our society, then democracy is at stake. And so we want an IEC that is impartial. We want an IEC that is looking after every single political party that is available in South Africa, that raises voices for those who are unheard in South Africa. We are not interested in them looking after the mandates or the interests of a few parties that are represented in Parliament, basically.
So let's move on to the IEC now considering postponing the local government elections. You've had several parties for this, others against it. You are one of the parties not happy with this at all. Why?
We are not happy with any idea that the elections can be postponed. It is important in a democratic society for elections to be held and held regularly. Any party that can purport to say that they would advance that elections be postponed is acting in their own selfish interests. We are a multi-party democracy. Anyone can come up. And this is not just about Action SA alone. We are speaking for anyone who wishes to raise a voice for South Africans. Our society, our country at the moment is in complete dire straits, and we cannot, for the life of our country, allow that elections can be postponed. There has been many other instances in the world where we've faced crises and elections have been held. So there is no reason why the IEC could purport or even entertain that elections could be postponed.
Have you submitted any information regarding your disregard for this possible decision? Because you're supposed to.
We have done so many times. We've held webinars discussing the viability of this. Not just thinking about us as a political party who's entering the market, but to think about whether we're acting on behalf of the interest of society, or that we're only concerned about us being able to run. And for us to be fair, we've had to look at, have there been elections held anywhere else under the similar circumstances, under the pandemic, for example, and have done so successfully. And elections have been held throughout the pandemic successfully in multiple countries. I mean, I think 75 to be exact. Multiple countries on the African continent have done the same. What we would want the IEC to actually be having a conversation about, we've had the pandemic since last, February, March. What they should have been doing, they already knew that we were going to be holding local government elections this year. So this is not a surprise, right? They should have been sitting out and looking at options. What is going to happen at a time when we would have this pandemic and yet we are supposed to be holding local government elections? This is not, we shouldn't be sitting in a situation where the IEC is pondering whether or not we can have local government elections.
Yeah.
And what they should be doing is communicating with us at all times to let South Africans know whether or not they are capable of hosting elections and hosting them freely, hosting them fairly, and hosting them safely.
Yeah.
And looking at best practice all over the world, for countries who have done it. And also, if you're looking at worst case scenario, looking at countries on the continent who have held elections and held them freely, safely, and fairly.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for. That's what South Africa is looking for. South Africa is looking for the IEC to communicate with us and let us know that we can actually go out to the polls and go out safely.
Talking about the polls, you are the Action SA's mayoral candidate for Ekurhuleni.
Yeah.
I have very little time, but tell me how you would do a better job than Mzwandile Masina there.
Two things. One has to make sure that our people have political awareness, that they're aware that actually when you're a mayor of anything or you're an official of anything, you actually are there to serve the people. Currently, we have so much discrepancies in how municipalities are handled, how things are managed, and all of that. And for us is to say that for the first time in a long time, South Africans deserve a people or an administration, a public service that actually puts them at the center of all of public service. And for us, I mean, I'm not a politician by training. I am a concerned South African who wants to make sure that our country is viable for generations to come. And that's where we're sitting. All of us are putting up, ourselves on the line. I've put myself, my hand up on the line to say that we cannot allow this situation to happen and to continue to happen in perpetuity and also with impunity, which is what we have seen. I don't think there's any South African, you and me, combined. I don't think there's any of us who can deny that our country is in a state of chaos, and if we want things to change, something different and something drastic is going to have to happen for us to be able to achieve that.
All right, good luck with that. And if you do get that job, we'll hold you to account.
Absolutely. I wouldn't want anything less. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Lerato Ngobeni is Action SA's spokesperson as well as their mayoral candidate for Ekurhuleni.